What's up, Green Bay Packers fans? Welcome back, and as always, thank you for joining me. My name's Paul Brettel. Today we're here to discuss the Green Bay Packers' final injury report ahead of their matchup on Sunday with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. But first, hit like on the video, hit subscribe on the YouTube channel. I do greatly appreciate it. You can find all my work over at Packers Wire, and you can follow me on Twitter at Paul_Brettel. So as I mentioned, Green Bay Packers announced their final injury report here on Friday afternoon. We're going to discuss each of those players. There are 7 that are questionable, 1 that is doubtful, and of course the potential impact of all this on Sunday's game. So let's begin at the running back position where A.J. Dillon is listed as questionable, dealing with what he said at his locker on Thursday was a broken thumb. He suffered that injury on the final drive of the Giants game on Monday night. Said it's just football. It's one of those freak things that happen. Defender came in, helmet hit A.J. Dillon's thumb just right, and that's what caused the injury. He did miss practice on Wednesday and Thursday. He did practice in a limited fashion on Friday. And in determining whether or not he's going to play, obviously there's a few things involved here. Primarily, one, how's he going to go about protecting that thumb? It sounds like they've experimented this week with different braces, padding, whatever terminology we want to use in terms of protecting the thumb injury. Matt LaFleur said during Friday's practice when he was on the field, it was padded up pretty heavily. The other aspect of it is, how does A.J. Dillon, if he does play, go about carrying the football? Obviously, that's an important part of the running back position, and you know the Tampa Bay defense is going to be heavily focused on that specific hand, if he's carrying it in there or if it's any way involved in, securing the football. And as Dillon mentioned, if he can go, he's going to go, but what he and the team want to make sure as well is that him being out there isn't a liability for this Packers offense either. So that's something that they're going to have to determine, with the remaining time that they have left. And again, if he's out there, specifically, how is he going to go about making sure that ball security is, it's always important, but an absolute emphasis for him, given the state of his thumb. Aaron Jones is also listed as questionable. He's working his way back from that MCL sprain. He said on Thursday as well that he's feeling confident that he's going to be out there for Sunday's game. We'll see if that ends up being the case, but very much seems like he's trending in the right direction. And the fact that they didn't put him on injured reserve, which would force him to miss a minimum of 4 games, and this game coming up would be the 4th one. So obviously in the recovery process, things can change that would adjust the timeline. But the fact that the Packers didn't do that initially coming off of the Chargers game, along with Aaron Jones' comments, point to, a good sign in him potentially being available for Sunday's game. The big question, regardless of whether, it's just Jones, if it's Jones and Dillon, whatever the combination of running backs that the Packers have on the field is, what's the workload going to look like for each of these players? A.J. Dillon with the thumb injury, Aaron Jones, being back on the field for his first game after missing 3. Like, is he gonna, be at 100% in terms of carrying that workload at the running back position? Are the Packers going to ease him in like they often do when, nursing an injury or coming off an injury? So that's going to be interesting to watch. And it just feels like, regardless of what the running back situation is, unless it's both of them on the field together, that Patrick Taylor is going to have a larger role this week. Had the opportunity to talk to him at his locker on Thursday as well, and he mentioned, he's always ready, regardless of when he was on the practice squad with the Green Bay Packers in week 1 or this week where he could potentially be taking on a larger role. His process for getting ready does not change because he always prepares like he's going to be running back 1 for that week. And depending on, again, Dillon's availability, Jones' availability, their workload, Kenyon Drake, someone else who could also see potentially more opportunities this week. Again, depending on how all of that shakes out with Jones and Dillon. He was called up last week against the Giants to be the 3rd running back. Didn't see any snaps on offense. He was there primarily was there specifically for, just to be depth at the running back position. And keep in mind, he just arrived in Green Bay. He hasn't been here even 2 weeks yet. But Matt LaFleur, Adam Stenavich have both said that if called upon, if they needed to rely on Kenyon Drake at any point, they do feel confident in him being able to step in. The biggest hurdle, for lack of a better term, that he's had to overcome just being new to this Packers team is the terminology. But he's a veteran, once getting that terminology down, he knows how to go out there and execute. So it does sound like there's a lot of confidence from Stenavich, LaFleur, the coaching staff, that if they have to rely on Kenyon Drake at all, they feel confident that he'll be able to step in and do what he's asked to do. So that's the running back position, some uncertainty there. Jair Alexander also listed as questionable. Again, he was a limited participant in all 3 practices this week. Matt LaFleur, when asked what does Jair Alexander need to do to get on the field, he said it's just confidence in his shoulder that it can hold up throughout the course of the game. And there's I don't want to speculate on what's going on behind the scenes with that, whether the injury is worse throughout this month plus that he's been out than what they originally anticipated, or anything else. So we'll just see, what comes on Sunday and if he's going to be out there or not. Dontavian Wicks, he's listed as questionable as well. He's progressed, from where we were on Monday night to where we are now. I think I mentioned this in the last video. Wicks, after the game, said that there was concern that he had a high ankle sprain. And if that's the case, oftentimes that's an injury that can keep you out for, at least a game, if not more. But he's been a limited participant the last 2 days, at least seems to be progressing from where he was Monday night after that game. And when it comes to attacking this Buccaneers defense, given the state of the running back position for the Packers and the injuries we just discussed, not knowing what the workload will look like for Jones, Dillon, who will be available, all of that, along with this Bucs defense having a very, very good front seven. They're allowing just 3.9 yards per carry this season. Been one of the best in football at slowing the run game. However, against the pass, they're allowing 7.2 yards per pass attempt this season, which for some context is the 4th highest in football by a defense. So in terms of just attacking this Buccaneers defense, the best way to do so, statistically on paper, given what they've shown so far, is through the air at this time. So that's what I expect coming into this game, where the emphasis is going to be. We look at the Giants game, we look at the Chiefs game, and it had an opposite feel to it for the Packers from an execution standpoint. You look at those 2 defenses, and those are opponents that you want to be able to attack on the ground. And the Green Bay Packers, for the most part, did lean on the run game heavily in those games. But again, given the opponent, the state of the running back position for the Packers at the moment, I could see that pendulum swinging in the other direction, and the passing game being a big, big part of this for the Packers. Now, with that said, Bucs are giving up the 7.2 yards per pass attempt, but this is a physical secondary. Samori Toure talked about this at his locker on Thursday. Similar to the Saints, these are defensive backs, cornerbacks they're going to jam you. They're going to put your hands on you. They're going to be aggressive. And I followed up and asked him, I said, so from a preparation standpoint, that's coming. Is there anything preemptively you can do, or is it just kind of reacting in the moment when it happens? And he said step 1 is just being aware and knowing that it's coming, getting your hands up and being prepared for it is honestly the best way to counter that aggressive nature from those Bucs cornerbacks. On top of that, they also have Antoine Winfield at the safety position, who has been one of the most versatile, one of the most impactful safeties in football this season. You name it, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers ask Antoine Winfield to do it, lining up at free safety, in the box, in the slot. In coverage, he ranks, again, amongst all safeties, one of the best at forcing incompletions. He's been one of the best at generating pressures and sacks off blitzing. He has the highest PFF run defense grade among all safeties. Like, the Packers absolutely need to know where Antoine Winfield is at all times, because he can impact the game at all levels of the field, sideline to sideline. So targeting or zoning in, honing in on knowing where he is, and always being mindful of that, because he is someone who, from the safety position, can be a game changer and can absolutely wreck this game. With Christian Watson being listed as doubtful, and I won't, on the previous video that I did, I went into how this offense missed his presence on the field against the New York Giants. There's the obvious big playability, but there's the attention that he draws, the spacing he forces defenses to create, which creates opportunities for others. And in his absence, we saw Samori Toure take on a larger role as that 5th receiver for the Packers against the Giants. He played 18 snaps, had 4 targets, and Toure in that game is a prime example of Jordan Love. He will go anywhere with the football. I've talked about this in previous videos, in that, consistently, for the last 5-6 games, once this offense has really gotten rolling, 9-10 different players, running back, tight end, receivers, have had targets in a specific game. And the fact that Toure, who over the second half of the season has been inactive on game day more than active, came in, saw 4 targets on just 18 snaps, again, just goes to show that, Love is going to go with the football where the matchup is, where the defense dictates, where the read is. There isn't a ton of honing in on that one specific guy in a given situation. Toure, when asked about taking on a larger role, similar to Patrick Taylor, talked about how he's always prepared, like he's going to get out there and see action. And he said this season, being active, kind of that back and forth. And as I mentioned, more recently being inactive, he said it's been frustrating at times, but at the end of the day, he wants to see this team succeed. He enjoys seeing the other members of that receiver room find success. And so he's been a great teammate in that regard and helping this team along. And when asked about his connection with Jordan Love, he went back to talked about last season when both of them were on the scout team offense for a period of 6-7 weeks and helping to develop that chemistry that they have. Because we've seen, not just in this Giants game, but when Toure's gotten snaps this season, Jordan Love has gone his direction. So there is some, familiarity, some connection there that plays into what I just mentioned in terms of Love's ability to also go with the football elsewhere. So just keep our eyes on Samori Toure. Could be someone who, with Watson listed as doubtful, Dontavian Wicks listed as questionable, could be someone who's in store for more opportunities in this game. Last couple here, Quay Walker, Darnell Savage will lump together. Both are listed as questionable. Darnell Savage did not practice at all this week. He's dealing with a chest injury. It's, I believe, the same chest injury that he was listed as questionable with going into the Giants game. For what it's worth, Darnell Savage did end up playing 53 snaps against the Giants. He did not, like I mentioned, he did not practice at all this week and is listed as questionable. Quay Walker, he was out against the Giants after suffering a shoulder injury against the Kansas City Chiefs. After missing Wednesday's practice, he was a limited participant on Thursday and Friday. The challenge, one of the challenges, I should say, for this Packers defense in this matchup is we all know about Mike Evans. We all know about Chris Godwin. But running back Rachaad White for the Buccaneers has been one of the most productive pass-catching running backs in the NFL this season. Yards after the catch, target, total yards. He's been one of the best, one of the most productive in that area. He's fourth on the Bucs team as a whole in terms of targets, only 2 behind tight end Cade Otton. He's a big part of this offense. And when you're a defense, and I asked Matt LaFleur about this, when you're having to account for, obviously, Mike Evans' downfield ability, what Chris Godwin can do, but also there's that check down threat. There's that, a running back in this instance who can make plays on short area throws and turn those into chunk gains. That can really stress out a defense because on a given play, you can't take away both of those. You can't take away the deep ball and the short area throw. Obviously, as the game goes on, depending how it's going, what the situation is, yes, you can and should adjust. But on a specific play, you got to pick your poison to a degree, and choosing to take away one of those elements leaves you susceptible in the other. So that chess match, as Matt LaFleur often refers to it as, in-game, adjusting to what the defense is doing, trying to, best prepare for what you think is coming on a specific play. That's going to be something that's going to be a really interesting balance to see how the Packers strike. Again, trying to make sure you defend Mike Evans and not letting him absolutely dominate this game, which we all know he has the ability to do, but also not letting Rachaad White do what he's done for much of the season, which has been a really, really productive pass catcher. Lastly, Eric Stokes is listed as questionable. I would fully anticipate seeing him out there on Sunday. The big question is in what capacity. He is still on injured reserve, but for 2 straight weeks now, 6 practices, he's been a full participant. The Packers also released Kyu Blu Kelly on Tuesday, I believe it was, which opened up a roster spot, which presumably is going to be for Eric Stokes because he is on IR. And in order to be active for Sunday's game, he is going to have to be added back to the 53-man. Last thing that suggests that Stokes is going to be out there is when designated to return from injured reserve, there's a 3-week window that opens. That window for Stokes ends on Monday. And if the Packers, and this isn't going to happen, but if the Packers were to go beyond that Monday and didn't put him on the 53-man roster, he would revert back to IR and his season would be over. He wouldn't have the opportunity to come back. So that's just a logistics, something to be mindful of. But again, that's not going to happen. I fully expect Eric Stokes to be out on the football field on Sunday. And like I said, in what capacity? You know, when he first returned against Denver, he was only playing special teams. You know, I don't expect him to be out there playing, you know, all of the defensive snaps or even half of them, you know, without Rasul Douglas. He's now in Buffalo, obviously. You know, depending on Jair Alexander's status for that game, I think there could be opportunities where they're a little more aggressive, for lack of a better term, in terms of trying to get Eric Stokes at least a few defensive snaps throughout the game, you know, depending on the specific situation. More obvious passing downs where you might have an additional cornerback on the field, or maybe he takes a few snaps from Corey Ballantyne, again, just to get him a few reps. Because remember, it's been since week 9 of last season when Stokes first suffered that initial injury that ended his season, and then you know, had him on the PUP list throughout the summer as well. So like I said, I expect Eric Stokes to be back out there. So there you have it, my friends. That is the Packers final injury report, my thoughts and the potential impact on Sunday's game. As always, I appreciate you tuning in. Hit like on the video, hit subscribe on the YouTube channel. I greatly appreciate it. You can follow me on Twitter at Paul_Brettel. You can find all my work over at Packers Wire. So until next time, friends, take care, stay safe, and as always, go Pack Go.